All right. Hi, I want to welcome everyone to the Imagine This Women's International Film Festival. This is Short Film Block 7. I want to thank Patrice and Imagine This for having me as a moderator today. My name is Kincaid Walker. I'm a filmmaker and a writer and an actress. I was an actress for many years in TV and film, and had always been writing, and a few years ago created a digital series called Hug It Out, which I was honored to have win Best Web Series in Imagine This, and go on to have them do some fun things on the festival circuit and win some awards. I started my own company with my longtime creative partner, Jason Exuzian, and we've been creating docuseries and we're working on a feature that because of COVID got somewhat delayed in the world in terms of production. But I want to say I'm so excited to be here today with this fabulous panel of female filmmakers. I had the pleasure of watching all of your projects, and they are all really impressive, really special. And so I'm excited to get to dig in with all of you here. So without further ado, I would love to just go around and have each of you tell us your name, a little about yourself, and then what your project is, and maybe a little about why you were attracted to telling this story. So whoever wants to jump in can go for it.
Hi, my name is Natalie Cook. I'm a screenwriter and director. The short film that I have in the festival, which I'm so grateful for, is Backwards God. It's a poetry film, and it basically retells the book of Genesis through a womanist lens. And I wrote the poem not even having the intention of creating visuals to the words, but it all came out naturally. And I'm really amazed at how this poem has taken on a life of its own in a whole new form.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's very powerful. And that first image of the woman or beautiful pregnant belly, it was such a great way into the story, into the poem, the film. All right, great.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Summer. I'm a director. I'm originally from Bali, Indonesia, and I've been in LA for a few years now. I started in advertising and I moved into narrative filmmaking. So I've done a lot of shorts and a lot of web series, and I'm moving into episodic directing now. My film was Arc. So it's about a woman, Captain Mira Bernard, who, for her, she's coming back from 5 years in space. But for her husband, it's been 40 years, and this is the day that they meet again after that many years for each of them. And I have this tendency to kind of just have an idea spring in my head and I write it down, and I wrote that one really quickly, and I'm not sure what the inspiration for it was, but I think a lot of it was just a lot of like the environmental damage that was happening last year and now, and just where the world is heading. It just kind of got me thinking about, you know, the Ark is she's out there looking for another planet to save us. So that's what was going on in my head when I was writing it. Thanks.
Yes, I found myself wishing there was a Gaia that we could all go to. Maybe make this one again into it. Wonderful. Welcome.
I'll go next. My name is Kylie Eaton. I am a director and screenwriter based in LA, originally from the Midwest. My film is called Dispel, and it is about a daughter dealing with her mother's addiction through the lens of her favorite fantasy TV show. And what drew me to writing the story is I really wanted to explore the mother-daughter relationship, where it's an imperfect relationship, and the mother is struggling with, you know, in this case, addiction or a mental illness. But I also wanted to explore it in a genre that would be more accessible to someone around that age, to like a, you know, preteen young girl. And so it was really fun because I got to pay homage to a lot of the TV shows and movies of the 80s and 90s, the sci-fi fantasy genre work of that era, while also getting to tell a story that was close to my heart.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Awesome. Marcela?
Yes, I don't want to be at the end. My name is Marcela Cosios. I am from Peru. I am in Peru now. My short film is Under the Balcony. In fact, I am a screenwriter, and this is my second short film as a director. I wrote this from a memory of my childhood with my father, in fact. Of course, I changed many things. And I needed to do it, in fact. Like, I don't know how to say, an homage to my father, who is that, who died 4 years ago. And well, it's a story about the communication of daughter, a child, and her father. No, they don't know how to communicate. They can do it because they remember the grandmother. And I tell this story one day, an important day here, because it was we had a football match here in Peru, to create the atmosphere in this way.
Fantastic. Thank you. Awesome. Yuru?
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Yu Chen. I'm from Shanghai, China, and I'm glad the festival has selected my first short film named Handscape, and it is a story about a hard of hearing Shanghainese boy who lived with his single deaf mother, and he is overcoming some of the obscure sexual identity crisis in herself, and he's trying to explore that through contemporary dance and sign language. So I graduated from New York University Tisch School of the Arts last year, and I'm currently studying deaf education at Columbia University's Teachers College. So I'm very glad to share this piece and share the backstory of that with you guys later. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Skye?
So I'm Skye Bergman, and I live in San Luis Obispo, California. I'm actually an educator. I've been a teacher at Cal Poly State University for 26 years, teaching primarily photography. And my first foray into filmmaking was, I don't know, you can sort of see the poster back there, a film called Lives Well Lived. That's a little corner of my grandmother, who was an amazing cook. And I went on to, because of her, interview 40 people who were living full lives. And that feature-length film actually was out in theaters and now is going to be on PBS in May. And the reason that I tell you that is one of the people from that film was this woman, Susie Edobelman, who is Japanese American. And her family gets together every year, the week between Christmas and New Year's, and the family gathers to make mochi. And it's a wonderful celebration. And I think I was so attracted to it because my grandmother and I would pass along history and connect the generations through cooking. And this is another way that that happens. And so this short film is all about connecting generations through the wonderful mochi making that's happening. And that'll probably be the germ of another feature-length film. So, for right now, it's a short film that's won a couple of awards and going through the film festival circuit virtually like everything else. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. It was so interesting getting to watch that process and that community of that, making the mochi together. Fantastic. And making sure, I think everyone's great. So I would love to kind of dig in here. One of the things I always think people have ideas for stories and characters, but to actually make it into something we can see, you know, I'd love to talk about all or some of the factors of kind of the nuts and bolts of filmmaking, how you got the locations or the funding or the actors, however that process of filmmaking came together. And if we could kind of think of it through the lens of being female filmmakers, how that influences or influenced that process.
I can start.
Great.
I also graduated from NYU.
Oh,
And
nice.
yay. I wasn't at Tisch, I was at Gallatin. And Gallatin's very interdisciplinary. And I mentioned that because I had such a hard time. I just felt so insecure, feeling like I wasn't able to write a script the way I perceived other screenwriters being able to. And because my background is in poetry, it just, I wasn't seeing that as a gift. I was seeing that as like a hindrance. And I was like, I don't know how to transition from poetry to film. And the moment I decided that I didn't have to like transition, but I could merge the two worlds together, that's when I was able to make this film. And, you know, being completely transparent, I did not have a budget. All I had was a creative partner also named Jason.
Nice. Perfect.
I was laughing when you were talking about you and your creative partner, but we've been friends for a very long time. He's a brilliant cinematographer. I really believe in my writing and my direction. And so we joined forces, and I know a lot of artists and actors, and I asked them if they would just be willing to be a part of this short film. If I would feed people, but I didn't have at the time anything to be able to give to people. And I'm so grateful that everyone who took part in it believed in the vision, because it was a lot of work, and that's very scary to ask people to do something without being able to compensate them. And so I can't believe that people believed in it that much, where they just wanted to be a part of it. And so not a day goes by where I'm not extremely grateful. But that's how it came together for me. It started as a poem. It started as me not really believing in myself as a screenwriter. And then and then I believed in myself as a screenwriter while also still believing in myself as a poet. And it took other people believing in me. And that's how I got this short film made. And that's not how I plan to do anything else in the future, but I'm grateful it worked out for me this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably going to be a theme that comes up about, the ways that women, we think non-traditionally in a lot of ways about not always just fitting these paradigms that have always been before us about how you make a film or how you write a script or the way you collaborate. Absolutely. So yes, please, hear us.
So I was listening to everyone's self-introduction, and you guys may say, oh, I'm a screenwriter, I'm a director, and I didn't mention any of that because the experience of studying in Tisch was a film and television making major. It's just very different. Let's say that I came to the school wanting to be a female director, and that was my only thing I want to do when I was 18 years old. And I came here, and through my years in the undergrad, I began to feel that filmmaking is not the only thing that I want to do. And that's when I encountered sign language, American Sign Language, and sort of realized a childhood dream that when I was very small, like back in Shanghai, I wanted to go to deaf school and communicate with the deaf children there because I was sort of lonely and I pay attention to the stuff that my peers do not usually pay attention to. And when I suggest learning sign language and going to these schools, my classmates and my teachers don't approve that, and they sort of just denied that passion. And I always held that in my heart. And I've been very passionate about the visuals and the gestures, the physical theaters all the way through my life. And until the moment in undergrad when I was struggling to find my way in the film industry that I encountered sign language, and the whole visual language and all that cultural just stirs my heart. And I was like, if I can only make one film before I graduate, that I'm gonna make it, but I want to make it in my hometown because the sign language is not universal, that I need to understand the differences in these languages, and it affects the way I develop my script and how I find my actors. And I cast real actors from the deaf community back in Shanghai, and the boy is hard of hearing and the mother is deaf herself. And interesting enough, she is also a single mother. So there are so many serendipities in this finding, and the boy himself is a member of the LGBTQ group. And it's just so many things, they come together, and I didn't expect to find them at the first time. But at the first time I saw the boy at the sign language center, like the cultural center in Shanghai, and he said, "Hey, Yiru, you have very good hearing." And I said, because I am a hearing person. And then I realized that he thought I was deaf because I was communicating with one of the deaf teacher using American Sign Language. I was actually communicating with that teacher using American Sign Language instead of Chinese Sign Language. And he thinks that I have such good sign language skill that I'm actually deaf, but I'm not. So there are a lot of people saying that you have a deaf heart deep inside of you. So when I'm like trying to develop the story along with the community group, I'm sort of not only thinking about myself, but I'm actually wanting to explore the communities, the stories. And I did a lot of research on the deaf education, on how to communicate with the surroundings on this very autism world. So I guess that I made a film and you guys sing it, or at least for knowing me that you know there's a person who's an advocate for the sign language culture and deaf culture, and I think that's enough for me. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, it was very interesting, very powerful. We don't often get, want to talk as we move on, everyone talks, but about some of the ways underrepresented people are featured in our stories or your stories. And that's certainly true with yours, Yiru. All right, wonderful. Great, Skye, yes, please.
So a couple of things. One is I went a little less traditional route, at least with my feature-length film. And this is just for aspiring filmmakers. I think I started writing grants and realizing I was spending more time writing grants than actually making my film. And so I started renting out rooms in my house through Airbnb, and that was how I funded my film. And I think sometimes you have to think outside of the box and think creatively. I felt like, because I was a teacher and I really advocate for everyone getting paid for what they do, because I think as creative people, we tend to, everyone wants to take advantage of that and say, oh, this will be good exposure. So I really made sure that everyone that worked for me was paid. And that was really important for me. In terms of the films, one of the things that I just wanted to mention is, in listening to all of you speak, I think I'm the only one that has a documentary film, but we all are so passionate about whatever it is that we are doing our films about. And I think that that's a common thread. And I always tell my students, the more personal, the more universal the message becomes. So I think for all of us, because we're so passionate about whatever the subject matter is, everyone that's viewing it is so interested in it, because you can see that authenticity really coming through in the film. And so I just want to say congratulations to all of you, because the films are wonderful. And I think that personal vision and that passion comes through.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Great. Soma, yes, please.
The film came about in a kind of a strange roundabout way. I had a funny story. It was I answered a Facebook post by my producer, who had written in a filmmakers group that he wanted to produce and pay for a series of short films in last year in 2019. And you see something like that and you think, he can't be serious. He's going to be inundated with insane filmmakers in LA who are all hungry to make their short films, and you know, is he even legitimate? But on a lark, I just emailed him, and we met up for coffee, and we actually had a lot of friends in common, so it was all, you know, safe and above board. And then we started working together. So he financed the whole thing. Be it, you know, it's a low budget film, but still he did finance and he produced the whole thing. So I worked with my DP, who I worked on a Snapchat show previously on. She DP'd my 2 seasons of it, actually. So she and I started working together very early on the concept. And then, you know, we just got a bunch of passionate crew people on board, and the actors came along, and, you know, the usual thing where you're in indie filmmaking, you kind of panic for a second whether you can get this person, and then they show up, and then are you going to be able to get that person, and then they somehow miraculously show up. And yeah, so it was an interesting thing where you see a post like that and you wonder whether you should reply or not. And in this case I did, and I found Nelson, who's an incredible guy, and we finished it at the end of the year last year, 2019, and we actually finished editing at the end of January of this year, and we had a whole massive like plan to do all the festival run and everything. And yeah, the next month things started going off the rails, and that's where we're at now.
Great. We're all coming live from our homes today. Exactly. Wonderful.
I can jump in with Dispel. I think you know, kind of looking at it through a filmmaker lens of like how to come together, how to make it. It's not my first short film, but what it was the first short film where I like waited to make it and waited to save money to have a budget where I could just be the director on it, which was really nice, because a lot of times, and I'm sure everyone here has done this, I'm, you know, directing, but I'm also producing and production designing and did the costume design, and you know, there's shorts where I've done that. And for this, I was able to, you know, get a full team around me who are actually taking care of those things, and so I could focus on the actual like job of a director, which was really nice. And in doing that, it was great because most of our department heads were women, and so that was great to have this like big female, you know, crew, mostly female crew. And I just met a lot of people on that, you know, short that I've worked with again in the future. And, you know, that's always a great feeling when you work with someone and they become sort of part of the club of, you know, you always want to work with them again. My costume designer, Brie Perry, I've worked with now multiple times. The composer I worked with, Jessie Nelson, she's fantastic, and we've continued to collaborate on things. And, you know, that for me was one of the best things that come out of Dispel, was these creative relationships that I hope to continue working with the same people.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, this project started 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I wrote a short story. I was living in Canada, in fact. I was living in Montreal. And just wrote this story, and I thought I must do a short film with it. And many years later, I moved back to Lima, where I am now, to be close to my father. And after he passed away, I decided to realize this project. I tried twice because I am an independent filmmaker. So to get enough money to do it was a nightmare, but finally I did it. And here in Lima, I am also a teacher. I teach screenwriting. So many of the team, the people of the team, are my ex-students, in fact. They are very good. I am very proud.
I love them.
And the main role, the main character role, the girl in the film is my daughter, in fact. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, she's wonderful in it.
I think, and she's not a professional yet. It was his first job, in fact. But we read the text many times, and his father in the film is a huge actor here, a wonderful actor, and he's a friend of mine. So he was very patient, and that's it. Was a dream come true.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I know projects sometimes take a while to get off the ground. Obviously, we all know that very well. Well, I'd love to kind of, we've touched on, each of you have touched on this in some ways, but, I think we're in a time where we're starting to see a lot of people's stories, character stories that haven't been told before, or stories told from a point of view they haven't been told from before, whether that's something that through the lens of gender or race or sexual orientation or just all the different culture. And I think all of your stories have pieces of that, those, kind of non-traditional protagonists and storylines. And I'd love to kind of see how that, what you're kind of moved to talk about on that factor, about as filmmakers, what you feel in terms of telling stories that are not necessarily, although more and more so, but haven't been told. Natalie, I would say yours is a really interesting look at the story of the sort of Genesis and Adam and Eve, but told through a female perspective, womanist perspective. If you want to start us off, that would be wonderful.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Kincaid. I first, I think, was inspired I didn't start writing the poem. I just wrote a line that ended up being in the poem. I was living somewhere for a long period of time, and beautiful, beautiful place, but trash was everywhere. And so like, it would bother me because I just didn't understand why there was trash everywhere. And it just made me think, like, it's interesting that like Earth is referred to as the mother, and the way human beings treat the earth. And then so I just started thinking about how everything is gendered, and how everything's connected. And I'm like, if the earth is gendered, if God is gendered, if it's gotta affect the way human beings interact with one another, and the way gender is perceived. And it just perpetuates patriarchy, and patriarchy and white supremacy go hand in hand. And I think for me, it was important to not just do it from a woman's perspective, but from that womanist perspective, because I think feminism and Black feminism and all these terms are wonderful. And I feel like one term that doesn't necessarily get included as much in the mainstream conversation is womanism, and it was coined by Alice Walker. And I just think it's so important to try to talk about patriarchy through this Black woman ideological perspective. And I wasn't trying to do that when I was writing the piece at all. It just flowed based on based on the experiences I was having. I was every day I was seeing the earth just so littered, but I was also experiencing really, really bad sexual harassment. So I think like just the combination of having to deal with those things on a daily basis, the result was, the response to that ended up being that piece. And so like a lot of visuals in the short are just like, you see someone throwing trash on the ground, and then you also see like a man just leering at a woman. And then it's just, it seems like these things aren't necessarily connected, but they kind of are the same thing in a way to me. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really powerful because it's a long kind of piece where he's sort of driving slowly by and kind of leaning out, and you feel all of her discomfort, and it's really powerful to watch. And just the connection also just of this idea of Adam and Eve, not to dive too deeply into it if you want to speak to it, but that you see the pregnant belly and you're like, yeah, this kind of story of the rib and all of this. And it's like, well, wait a second, there was a much more natural way to tell that story. And so if you.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm from the South, and I grew up in a Christian household. So it's a very scary thing to say things that question tradition to people who that is not only their culture but their identity, and to then to be from that, and then to come back and to like show this work, and then to literally to basically say, I don't believe I came from a rib. I don't even know how that's logical. If women give birth, I mean, it's to me, it seems like it's something simple to question, because I'm not even necessarily saying I know what the truth is, or, you know, what anything is. But I do find it interesting that it seems like I'm not allowed to question those things, like the story about the rib and all that. But it seems logical, the questions I'm asking. So I find that fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah. Anyone? I know Yeru, if you want to speak to, I know your piece is about a young boy in Shanghai who's dealing with sexual identity. And you want to speak to that a little bit in terms of not often told stories.
Right. A couple of fun facts that I was in Shanghai's, or the China's only public girls' school for 7 years, and I co-write the script with my, let's say, my best friend from junior high and high school, from girls' school, and she was a strong advocate for the LGBT group, and she was also a very talented writer. So when I was telling her about my passion in dance, in gestures, and all that physical stuff, and I asked her to be my co-writer. So we sort of just trying to, it's just like me pulling a part of my heart onto the table, and she also, or I'd say they, because she chose the fluid sexual identity after she finished writing the script of this film.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so we were discussing a lot about the issues happened in the Chinese LGBT community, and the news of a lot of festivals or events relating to the Pride and like the queer festivals were canceled, or let's say, or just get permanently delayed in the China, and that also like just takes away a lot of opportunities, or the things we want to do back in Shanghai. So we were sort of like, we faced a lot of struggles when trying to make this, because I have to think that if I make this film, what will it bring me, or what will I counter in the future if I decided to go back to Shanghai and the other people to see that I make this film. But I still want to make this film, and regardless what my parents or my family or let's say the society looks at it, because it's such a minority group as deaf community itself, and also within that minority group is a minority group that their voices are just not being heard. And a lot of the emotions were brought by the actors themselves that are experiencing these issues and problems in first person's perspective. And I think my role in this film were more like I'm just that thing that brings the chemicals together, I guess. But I don't want to say this is my film because there are so many components to the thing. It's very hard to discuss, but at least you have a 20-minute film that shows a clip or a slice of life of the community, and to show that there's a lot of misunderstandings within the culture itself, and it will become political in the future. But we'll see. We'll see where this will end, I guess.
Very powerful. Have you shown it in Shanghai at all? Have you been
It
able
has
to?
got into the Shanghai Queer Film Festival, but the Shanghai Pride Film Festival has been cancelled. I believe it's the government asking it to not having these gatherings regardless. But it has been active for the past 10 years, but this year it has been shut down. So it's a pity for festivals like that, but I'm still glad the Shanghai Queer Festival has selected my film and decided to screen it, but the date has not been announced yet. So fingers crossed, and let's see what will happen.
Wonderful. Good luck with that. Fantastic. Who else would like to kind of weigh in on why? Yeah, go for it.
Just
Soma.
really quickly,
Yes, please.
I'm half Indonesian, part Indonesian, and I grew up in Bali. So one thing that I am always conscious about is writing stories about, I guess, multiculturalism, or, you know, being mixed, or one foot in one world and one in the other. And for this film especially, I knew that I wanted a mixed race couple. Whether that's not, you know, revolutionary or anything, but it's sometimes when you put those kind of parameters on your casting, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. So, like, you know, figuring out if you get one actor, you have to try and make sure the other actor is of the, you know, if you're doing a mixed race couple. So that became a little bit of a puzzle for me when I was casting it. And I knew that I wanted to have a woman of color for the captain, because that was really important for me to be, you know, the woman who saves basically Earth had to be a strong woman of color. And it was, when we found Sheila, it was a long casting process to find her. And when we found her, it just kind of fell into place, where the man who plays the man opposite her is Patrick Gorman. He was recommended by a friend, and we met with him, and he plays the old Captain America in Avengers. And as soon as we met him, it was like,
oh wow.
Oh. And he read the script, and he immediately was attracted to it. And we're like, oh, okay, great. Do you want to be in our little short films? Please do. Yeah. And we found a really great counter to her incredible strong character. He's so gentle and he's so lovely. So for me, it might not be groundbreaking, but I really wanted to have that portrayed, because there's only 2 characters in my whole film. So I wanted to make sure that they were, you know, from my side, representing, you know, my mixedness.
Yeah, and obviously, because she would really be his age, she's just been on this, and so to see an interracial couple that would have been from, you know, I won't say it's not still hard, but a while back, and having her be the captain, who would have, you know, in a similar time, it was very powerful. And this idea of, you know, we watch, how many films we watch where women are sort of, you know, waiting for the man to come home, or waiting to, you know, just kind of, so it was such a nice flip on that, you know, that he had been waiting for her to do this thing she needed to do in her career, and on this, you know, this mission for
I mean, it might not be, you know, a massively huge loud message, but I thought subtlety also works. If you think about it, if you think about her as a character, that also works. And I have to tell you, casting an 80-year-old man is a whole thing.
As in, there's not a lot.
There's not many 80-year-old actors, full stop. And to find him, we were so fortunate.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Obviously, they were both great. And they had a great chemistry.
They had great
together.
chemistry. Yeah,
Intimacy
they had
and-
actually worked once before, and he had suggested her.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it all worked out in the end because I think they're both marvelous.
Yes, I agree. Wonderful. Well, Skye, do you want to? Obviously, yours is entirely about a culture that probably a lot of culture making mochi, and that most Americans probably are not familiar with, or I will say at least non-Japanese Americans.
That's true, but I also think, I mean, like my last film was all about older Americans or older adults, and we don't tend to focus on that in films. So especially during this time of the pandemic, when a lot of older Americans are being lost, I think that collecting their stories, and the Mochitsuki is just an extension of that, so that their stories are not going to be lost, I think is vitally important. And then whatever you can do. I mean, I feel like the film is kind of the catalyst to help connect generations and to remind us that we want to take the time to interview our friends and family and loved ones and to collect their stories. So I think that that's vitally important during this time. And then there's stories of resilience and the things that they overcome. I mean, you know, even in Mochitsuki, they talk about being interned during World War II and still making the mochi. So I think it's really important in this country that we remember. It's very easy to say that during World War II, all these things happened elsewhere, but it's far more difficult to look inward at what our own country did to our own group of people that were Americans and born here, and what that meant. And so I think especially in this moment in time, I think those are really important things to reflect upon.
Absolutely. It has it collides with a lot of what we're seeing today in the news, and obviously some really terrible things we're all witnessing. And so to kind of have that darkness in the background, but to see people who found this sense of community and spirit. I mean, the spirit of the older man in it is incredible, as he's kind of, and all of them, but he really stands out to me. It's just that way of persevering somehow through things and keeping your heart full.
I think there's stories of resilience are what's really important. I mean, I think that one of the things that we're all in this moment going through this pandemic, you know, it's one of the few things that we're all globally going through. And so, you know, as people in my first film went through World War II, they went through civil rights, the Japanese internment, losing loved ones, the Holocaust. But I think that their stories of resilience are what gives us hope. And the thing that I remember from all the interviews that I did with them is that, you know, there are many times like right now where we can't control what's happening around us. Like none of us can control the fact that we are having to do our films virtually, or, you know, you can look at the bad side of it, but the great side of it is you can control your attitude. So instead of being disappointed by that, I'm excited that I get to meet all of you. I might not have been able to come to New York and be part of this, but now because of this, it's so, you know, I get to meet all of these wonderful women who are out there doing great things. And so I think that it's all the things to remember in this moment is that many times we can't control what's happening around us, but we can control our attitude. And that's key to living a well-lived life and to making it through times like this, is that resilience of remembering that it's our attitude that gets us through.
Absolutely. Yes. Well said. Yeah. Marcela, would you? Yes.
Yes. In fact, my project is a very personal project, I think. It starts like that. And I am not really a practical person. I am very emotional. So when I fight to make a project a reality, in fact, I have to learn to be smart, because after that I have a huge debt, a lot of problems to do it. But I just feel I need to do it. You know, I really need to do it to take another project then. And when I finished, I realized that I don't know the many sacrifices or problems, but I am very happy at the end anyway. Well, as I said, my daughter is the main character, and the father in the film is a very important actor here, and he's my friend. He helps me all the time. The grandmother is a friend of mine and my neighbor. And the little baby in the film is a friend's daughter from my school, who's a friend of mine, and she had this beautiful baby, and everybody just helped me to do it, to do the project, and it was a crazy project about communication between different generations, and I just need to tell that. I didn't realize about many other things finishing it. I am not a producer, in fact. It's the most difficult part for me, in fact. I had to learn, when I finished the short, I had to learn what to distribute the short film.
Right.
It was a crazy thing for me, but I learned a lot, and I promise I will fix all the mistakes for the next project.
Well, I think you're selling yourself a bit short. I think that it's really well done, and it's very polished and very moving. I love that it's a personal story of this. How does this father and daughter, how do they connect? And that way they find that connection is beautiful. So
thank you.
Absolutely. Kylie, I think you haven't, I'm trying to think, weighed in here on this one. I'd love to hear, because you have a lot of elements in your piece that I think are non-traditional and hopefully will become more traditional, but
right.
Speak to that.
Yeah, I think it's important for me, first of all, like I think has been said a lot here, is when it is a really specific personal story, I think that connects to more people, even though that might seem sort of oxymoronic, that the more specific it is, the more it can connect. But it was very surprising to me, even just in sending the script around to potential collaborators, department heads, things like that. I got so much feedback from people who would be like, oh, this is how addiction has impacted my life. This is, this story touches me because of this person in my family. And so to me, that was not something I expected, because it's one of those things like mental health that we're very sort of either quiet about, or we don't, necessarily publicly speak on, and we wouldn't know unless we were very close with someone that was something they had been through. And so that was very interesting to me to sort of see how it, a story like that really connects people and really sort of brings up a conversation around things like mental health or addiction. And especially, I think, dealing with it through the point of view of a younger, like preteen child, I think sort of enhances that. It shines a light on the fact that maybe we don't talk about it enough in terms of kids that are dealing with it, or kids that are in difficult situations with their families. And so that was something that I really wanted to highlight and to talk about. And then in terms of casting, I wrote, there's a superhero in it, in this sort of fake TV world that I dreamed up. And I wrote it with Gina Torres in mind, just because she's like one of my favorite actors ever. I've been watching her on TV since, I was in school. And luckily for me, she just was like really into it and signed on, and, it was really exciting. And she, she has a daughter. So I think the she said like the mother-daughter thing was something that she related to. And, so that was great. And then from there, casting it was important to me to not have all the characters look like me, to be able to, tell stories in this like sci-fi world that include a more representative universe of what we live in. And so, I kept the casting open and was lucky enough to meet with Eris Baker, who is on This Is Us. And she was just exactly like the personality when she walked in. I was like, oh, that's Lizzie. That's exactly, you know, who I had really been thinking of to have this, like, you know, she's just so open, right? And that's what this character was about. She was very open and sort of wore her feelings on her sleeve, and that's sort of how, you know, we started. And then sort of like Soma was saying, but in the opposite way, once you cast someone, then it's like, okay, you got to build the family around them and build that family up. And that was such a fun process to do as well. And they all, the whole cast, I think, really just took the story to heart and wanted to tell the story of this family with authenticity and grace, which I think they absolutely did. And they brought so much to the story outside of what I had originally dreamed of. So I'm, you know, really grateful to them and grateful that it seems to have connected with people.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I know. Soma, I don't know if you wanted something. I want to encourage if people have places where they want to add things to please, you know, join if you'd like to add something to any of these pieces, if they resonate with your own film or what you want to say. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to cut off anybody if they were wanting to talk. Well, I'd love to speak to a little bit the work. There's so much great visual work in all of your pieces, and I can think of moments in each of them that really, Soma, and yours, when through the door, when you see her take her helmet off. Kylie, and yours, the mother as the literal monster for you know, a piece of it. You, the pinkies, the painting the pinky, and then the nails, and Natalie, as I said, the belly. There's in everyone's pieces, there's so much great visual work. I'm wondering if you'd like to speak to how you kind of crafted that, and there was something, yeah.
With mine, I had actually I had storyboarded that and showed it to my DP, and she's wonderful. She can kind of pretty much do anything that I think of. But it was really funny. I have some funny behind the scenes photos from that particular sequence, because we had a stand-in, and she just basically, because we had no budget, she had a helmet, like a motorcycle helmet, that she just would just do this a few times. And we have these really hilarious, she was just wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and she would just kind of do this with the motorcycle helmet. And it kind of, you know, with sound design and all this kind of fun lighting, you get a little bit more of a mysterious look to it. But essentially we'd open the door and we'd fill the room with smoke, and she unfortunately would have to take breaks, you know, would open the door to give her some oxygen, and she'd just do that every so often. But she was really game, and she was really lovely. I think the whole visual style of the short I had come up with Kayla Hoff, who's an incredible, like, I keep mentioning her because she's quite young, but I think she's going to take over the world. She's the most talented DP that I've ever worked with. And she had very little to work with, which I think a lot of us are used to. You know, indie filmmakers tend to have really low budgets, but with what she was given, you know, she just made, I think, it was beautiful. It was, the light was painterly. She just kind of, I really wanted it, unfortunately, to look like what we had a couple of weeks ago with, you know, the fires in the sky.
Yeah.
And it was so funny that is what came about, because my producer messaged me jokingly last week saying, you know what, we would have saved a bit in lights if we had just waited, you know, 6 months to shoot this. And like, the irony is I gave her references from the Australian bushfires.
Oh my gosh.
And that was what I used as reference of what I imagined the earth would look like, a scorched post-apocalyptic earth would look like. And I imagine a world where we were dealing with disease and pollution and scorching and, you know, fires. And the irony is, you know, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting here at home thinking, okay, I'm at home, basically would love to have their kind of decontamination unit at my front door that I had in ARC. The sky is red. We're in a pandemic. And this was within 6 months of finishing a short that I thought was far, far, far into the future. And it's strange how how things turn out. But yes.
Wow.
Mm.
Oh, that's
Anyway.
incredible. That's great. Well, I want to make sure also that we find out how we can all follow you. I know we're kind of closing in. I'd love to keep talking, but I also want to make sure that people can find out how to follow everyone. If you want to kind of speak to the visuals and then also give that information, because I don't want to keep people from answering that question. I'm very curious. So if you'd like to jump in.
I'll jump in real quick, just in terms of, because you mentioned the monster, my
Yes,
special effects
please.
makeup
Yes,
artist, her name is Chelsea Hernandez, and she did a fantastic job with, we really wanted to keep as much practical as we could, and her and Lee Sherman was our actor in that role who played the monster, and they were, 8-hour pre-calls on set at like 3 a.m. to get all of that prosthetic makeup on. So I just wanted to give them a shout out because they were fantastic, and really
It's incredible.
it was exciting to sort of bring the monster to life from the concept art we had done. So I'll throw a shout out to them. And then if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram at Kylie109, and Dispel is Dispel Short Film, and it's also at dispelshortfilm.com. So thanks.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I can go next. You can find me at skyebergmanproductions.com. Everything, all my films and everything are up there, as well as all the links to social media. So
fantastic. Natalie, do you want to, and if you want to speak to the visuals too, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut off anyone who wanted to talk about that.
Since the Adam and Eve story has been brought up, I just wanted to start the short film with not necessarily Eve, but I guess you could infer that maybe it's Eve, and just a woman like standing before the tree of life. I thought it would be powerful to show like the beginning of a story with just the woman and not the woman coming from the man as the beginning of the story. So I thought that would be powerful to begin with that kind of visual. And my Instagram handle for my production company with my cinematographer, Jason Cermak, is Little Light Pictures, like this little light of mine. So Little Light Pictures, and my personal account. Definitely don't need people to follow me on that, but if you would like to, it's Natalie Sierra Cook.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Euro, yes, please.
Yeah, and since the characters in the film are mainly using sign language to communicate, so that influences a lot of my storyboard making. So I have to make sure that you can't just go too close to their faces, because you have to see their hands and gestures when they're signing to each other. So that's a very interesting point that I want to make out. And the sound design, we also spend a lot of efforts trying to, and we communicate with our protagonist and ask what he feels the music and how he feels the sound in real life, and then we decide the sound effects for the film. And for the Instagram, you can find me at Iruc, just YIRUC, and that's it. You can find me. And there's a little thing I want to point out, because I have my name in Chinese characters, and it's when I tell people like you can find me through like these 8 alphabets, I always feel that I'm reduced to these 8 alphabets, but I do have these these beautiful Chinese characters to represent my name, but it's we're here, so yeah, we'll see if you can find me.
Fantastic. We will. Great. Marcella, yes, please.
Quickly, well, about photo, I work with the DP of my project is a good friend of mine, Fernando Kum. He is from Guatemala, and he's living in Mexico. He lives in Mexico, and he came to Lima to help me. And we talked for many, many months before about the ideas I had. and he helped me with many other ideas. And I worked with him in my first project too. So I like to work with him because we understand each other and I feel comfortable. That's it. And if you wanna find me, I am not really good with social media. I have my Facebook and my Instagram and my website with my name, Marcela Cosios. That's it. I don't know if it is enough.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
My Instagram is just my full name, Soma Helmi, and that's the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank all of you. I'd love to stay in touch with you. If you'd like to follow me, I'm at Kincaid Walker. And you can follow the festival at Imagine PRODS. And you can find out about all of the events that are upcoming this week. And I just want to thank all of you and congratulate you on your projects. And I wish you the best of luck with all of them. And it's been a pleasure to watch them and get to talk with you all about them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.